You won't say this out loud, but you realize no one is coming to save you. Not family, not the man who swore he'd be there. The truth is ugly. You give everything and get almost nothing back, and still blame yourself for it. Today, it finally hit you. You're exhausted, emotionally unsupported, and pretending you're fine. But there's something worse. You learned not to expect anything from anyone, and you call that strength. When, in reality, it's trauma. No one sees what happens at night, when you break down alone, when the silence hits like a punch, when you realize God is the only one left. And here's what no one tells you. Your loneliness isn't destroying you, it's exposing you. But are you ready to face that? You think you're overreacting. You think it's drama. You think it's too much sensitivity. But it's not. This has a name, and it has a root. What you feel is not neediness. It's an old pattern, an automatic reflex formed long ago when you learned affection disappears and people don't stay. Jung described this as a complex, a wound that triggers responses without your permission. You react before thinking, you protect yourself before feeling, you run before depending, even when you want love. That's why you accept so little, because little feels safe, little doesn't threaten you. Little doesn't disappear as fast, and strangely, little hurts less. At least at first, you didn't choose loneliness. You learned loneliness. You learned to trust only yourself. You learned not to expect support. You learned to survive alone. And then you called that strength. But that strength costs you. It costs your emotional health. It costs your peace. It costs your faith. It costs your ability to receive love. And you never noticed the price. Your fear isn't being alone. Your fear is needing someone, because needing means risk of disappearing, risk of rejection, risk of reliving the first wound. And there's something you never say. Deep down, you think you're hard to love. You think something about you pushes people away. You think you're flawed, and you try to compensate by being strong all the time. But here's the real insight. You are not hard to love. You are hard to reach. Because your heart lives on alert, always in, what if they leave me, before anyone even tries to stay. And that's why, when life collapses, only God remains. Because He is the only one who doesn't need to fight your defenses. He was already on the other side of them, waiting for you to tire out, waiting for you to return. You thought you needed someone, thought love would fix everything, thought company would fill the void, but it didn't. It only covered it for a while, until it hurt even more. Here's the truth. You called attachment love. You called crumbs choice. You called absence destiny. You called pain purpose. And you called coincidence a sign from God. It wasn't love. It was fear. Fear of repeating abandonment. Fear of looking inside. Fear of admitting you were breaking, fear of sitting alone with yourself. You held on to little, because little didn't judge you, little didn't pressure you, little didn't leave so fast. At least that's what you believed, but little destroys slowly, and you mistook that for safety, mistook silence for peace, mistook indifference for maturity, mistook coldness for emotional stability, mistook endurance for faith, but none of it was true. The illusion is seductive. It convinces you this is better than nothing. It makes you believe asking for love is weakness. It makes you think accepting less is humility. It makes you repeat patterns thinking you're waiting on God's timing, but you're not. You didn't stay because of love. You stayed because you feared returning to yourself. You stayed to avoid silence, stayed to numb memories, stayed to avoid feeling your own soul's weight, and you called that a choice. Here's the shock. It wasn't him who deceived you. It was you deceiving yourself about who you needed to be loved. You shrank, you dimmed, you lost yourself trying to fit. The illusion promised safety, but gave you anxiety, promised companionship, but gave you absence, promised destiny, but gave you repetition. Now the veil has fallen. You see the cycle, see the emotional lie, see the hunger for affection, see the escape disguised as faith. and you realize none of it held you up. If any part of this story touched your wound, it's because you're not walking through this alone anymore. Click the button now and subscribe. Not to follow a channel, but to walk with someone who understands your pain. Here, every video names what you've never been able to express. Here, you see that God isn't abandoning you, He's explaining you, and you don't have to go through this without meaning anymore. You reached a point where nothing could hold you anymore. Not people, not promises, not your own strength, and that's exactly where God stepped in, because He always starts where you end. Psalm 73:26 is not poetry, it's a diagnosis. It's the exact portrait of the day your heart fails, and even then, God remains. He doesn't pull away when you collapse. He draws near. God saw every night you cried alone. He saw the forced smile. He saw the strength you pretended to have. He saw the fear you hid even from yourself, and He never left because of it. He waited for you. You thought you were losing everything, but God was removing what was removing you, removing what drained you, removing what confused you, removing what imprisoned you emotionally, and leaving only what sustains. Because when a woman has only God, she finally notices who was there all along. She realizes she doesn't need to beg for love, doesn't need to chase presents, doesn't need to prove her worth. She only needs to rest. And resting isn't giving up. Resting is trust. It's admitting, I can't do this alone. It's allowing God to do what you never could on your own. It's letting go of a weight that was never yours. It's breathing again. God didn't leave you empty. He left you available, without distractions, without illusions, without love that harms. So you could see what truly matters, what you called abandonment. God called reunion. Reunion with your soul. Reunion with your real strength. Reunion with the truth you avoided. Reunion with Him. What you called weakness. God called opening. Opening for the new. Opening for healing. Opening for a love that doesn't disappear. Opening for a future you couldn't imagine. And maybe it hurts to admit. But the illusion had to break. The cage had to open, the false love had to fall apart, so God could rebuild you the right way. If this revelation spoke to you, subscribe now and write in the comments, God is my strength. This declares healing and opens space for what He's about to do. The first healing begins with a decision you've avoided your whole life, ending invisible pacts with pain. You carried old promises that were never yours. Promises to be strong all the time, to not bother anyone, to never need anything. But now you see, that's not strength. It's emotional exhaustion. It's survival disguised as independence. It's self-protection becoming a prison. It's trauma choosing for you, and you don't have to live like that anymore. The first practical action is simple and difficult. You must say out loud, I need help. Not from just anyone, but from God first. And from healthy emotional support after. Because healing doesn't happen in silence. When you admit need, the cycle breaks. The abandonment complex loses power. Your mind stops sabotaging you. Your heart stops running before the danger. Your soul leaves survival mode. For the first time in years, the second action goes deeper. You must confront the lie that followed you since childhood. The lie that you don't deserve care, that you're hard to love, that your heart is too much. None of that was ever true. Faith is this too, facing the wrong belief, replacing no one stays with God never left, replacing I'm a burden with I matter, replacing I must be strong with God sustains me, replacing guilt with awareness. Today, the healing is emotional, but also spiritual. You must pray with brutal honesty. Say exactly what you feel. No filter, no fear of disappointing God. Pray like this: Lord, I don't know how to trust, but I want to learn. This prayer opens paths you've never walked, paths that unite faith and psychology, paths that rebuild you from the inside out. Because God doesn't only heal what you confess, He heals what you uncover. He heals the inner knots. He heals the emotional repetitions. He heals what you didn't know was hurting, and He does it at the perfect time. Today's action is simple, but it changes everything. You admit need, you surrender control, you stop pretending strength and let God rebuild what you tried to carry alone. Now, if your mind drifted, come back here with me. Pay attention. This is the part that actually changes your life. The second healing starts with something you've never done, interrupting the cycle before it begins. You always notice the pain too late, after the attachment, after the expectations, after the emotional investment. But that changes today. The first step is objective. You must learn to recognize the pattern at the first sign. When someone disappears, when they treat you as an option, when you start over-explaining yourself, when your body already knows something is wrong. Early recognition is freedom. It prevents relapses, prevents emotional crumbs, prevents abandonment repetition, prevents the collapse you dread, and gives you your power back. The second step goes deeper. You must replace the question, "Does he like me?" with a far more important one, "Does this make me well?" It's simple, but transforms everything. For the first time, you put yourself at the center. Not him, not fear, not loneliness, not fantasy. You. When this question becomes a habit, your entire emotional life shifts. You stop chasing, stop decoding silence. Stop romanticizing neglect, stop fighting for the bare minimum, and start choosing what strengthens you. Now comes the spiritual part. When you choose what makes you well, God starts sending what is His. Healthy relationships, mature connections, emotional peace. But God only does this when you release the rest. He won't place a promise on occupied ground. He won't plant newness in wounded soil. He won't pour love into illusion. He waits for space. And now you're finally creating that space. Today's strategy is simple, but it demands courage. Recognize the pattern early, change the question, make room for God to move, and let Him choose for you. In the end, practical healing is this: small decisions, consistent ones, radical ones, intentional ones, that change everything inside you. You remember that day, the silent room, the dark screen, and the feeling that no message was coming in. Today, you understand that moment. It wasn't abandonment, it was revelation. Revelation of a pattern that trapped you. Revelation of a strength you didn't see. Revelation of a God you only recognize at rock bottom. Because that's where He speaks the loudest. The pain wasn't punishment, it was diagnosis. It was the collapse of the old self, the self that accepted too little, the self that feared losing, the self that lived in survival mode. You didn't lose a person, you lost an illusion, lost a cycle, lost emotional repetition, lost the need to prove your worth, and that loss was deliverance. Now you understand Psalm 73:26. Your heart failed, your strength failed, your certainty failed, but God didn't fail. He became what was missing. Now you see the truth. When a woman has only God, she is not at the end. She is at the beginning of awareness, the beginning of healing. The loneliness that broke you is the same loneliness that returned you to yourself, returned your identity, your clarity, your faith, and your emotional dignity. The question that once tortured you, "Why did this happen to me?" now has an answer. It happened to wake you up, to rebuild you, to free you from yourself, and to pull you closer to God. The cycle is over. The pattern is over. The chasing is over. The guilt is over. The lonely battle is over. What remains now is peace. And when you look back, you understand. You were never alone, never abandoned, never directionless. It was God leading you through the desert to teach you how to live in the promised land. If this message spoke to you, subscribe to our channel. Here, every story reveals why you hurt and what God is teaching you through it. Psychology to understand yourself. Spirituality to understand why this is happening. For those who reach the end of this video, write in the comments, "God is enough for me." May this declaration open doors of healing in your life.